We are live. Hey, do any of y'all have Facebook or YouTube open on your computer right now?
Yes, actually,
I have
I do.
Facebook.
It might cause a little bit of a delay or something if you do that. I would recommend just, if you can, just close those out, and then we just use the technology we're using here, and we'll just rock and roll this way. I am really excited about this because this is a subject that I don't know enough about, and I know most people don't know enough about, but I feel like I have got the absolute top experts that I know of in this area. And it's like, people just don't know you guys. They don't know how hard you guys are working behind the scenes. I mean, well, the people that know, and they get it, but so many people don't. So let me give a little bit of background. This whole thing started with a relationship that I guess was developed, I guess, back in the day with Fred and Julie McCarty. They are leaders at the True Texas Project. That's what an old Tea Party group has kind of morphed into. And through that, they were old real estate clients of mine. And then before they ever got into politics.
No way.
Yep. So then they got into so then it's like we're doing business, and then they just got passionate about following their values and convictions, and before you know it, they started down the path and of getting a little bit more involved politically, and I started building my business, and I just said, hey guys, I'm not interested in going down the political route whatsoever. I am just
don't blame you.
Oh my gosh, man, it's just horrible. It's just horrible. But so we just stayed in our own lane. But I have so much respect and admiration for everything that they've done and built. And the thing that is so shocking to me is I got to see how everything got started and what it all boils down to. It's like they've introduced me to Fran. They've introduced me to you, Robert, or it's only through those relationships. So much of everything that we've done, the relationship I've got with Matt Krause, I called them before I talked to anybody. And I just said, hey, what do I do? What do I do? And here's the cool thing about it. This is the reason why I bring it up is because they are normal folks that just said, I want to make a difference. I have some values and some convictions that I stand behind, and I'm going to go out there and fight for what I believe in. And I do not believe everything. I don't believe everything that you guys believe. I don't believe everything that anybody believes. We all have our own unique beliefs and values. But one thing I respect is somebody that's willing to stand up for what they believe in. Whether I agree or not is a different topic. If you're willing to get on a forum like this, share some ideas, help people. And, I believe that it's that kind of discourse that allows us to get to a place that is a very healthy place. And it's that kind of back and forth. So anyway, I'm going to introduce both y'all a little bit, but I don't know enough about what you do. I just know that y'all are like angels on earth, kicking butt, taking names on behalf of people. So I'll start with Robert. Robert, you are a journalist with a group called Empowered Texans and Texas Scorecard, right? And you're out there kicking butt, taking names, and there is not another news organization that I know of that is holding locally elected officials accountable on the level that you guys are. And I see your name on the vast majority of those articles, and it doesn't matter if they're liberal or conservative. If it's something that you guys feel is not right, we're bound to see an article with Robert Montoya writing about it. So that's it. So let me introduce Fran. Now I'm gonna come back to you and allow you to just fill in the gaps. Okay. So Fran, let's see. Yeah, are you the president over there? Okay, the president of the True Texas Project. How long have you been with them?
Since late summer of 2009, so almost since the beginning, but not quite.
How about that? All right.
I have to say, that's a title well deserved for Fran. Being president, she has been a long-term hero for the movement, and I personally am honored to know you, Fran. So
thank you.
Yeah, I joke around about being the mayor of Tarrant County, and Fran is like the president of Tarrant County. So
there you go.
Yeah. All right. So I will try and keep my mouth shut a little bit here because I honestly, I don't know enough about what you guys do. I just see you active. I see you going, and I'm like, okay, I've got a lot on my plate. I'm going to focus this direction. But so Fran, I'm seeing you. Tell me What are you passionate about? Why are you with True Texas Project, and how did you get to where you're at today?
Okay, that's a big question. I'm passionate first and foremost about liberty
That's
and
an understatement.
constitutional rights. And then my passion within that has become property taxes, truthfully. I started going to we used to be called Northeast Tarrant Tea Party, and I started going to those meetings in the summer of 2009 for the same reason we all did. You know, Obama got elected and started spending money like a drunken sailor, and we needed to do something about it. And the first thing I got involved in with them was their liaison program, and this is something Julie McCarty dreamed up. It's a great idea. And they recruit volunteer liaisons to be assigned to every elected official in our region. Everything from county commissioners and mayors and city councils and schools to state reps and senators, just everything. The liaison then is the communication connection between us and our members and that particular elected official. So I said, okay, I'll volunteer. I'll be a liaison for the Keller School Board. And so I started doing that, and we had a training. And after the training, I had all these questions, and I emailed them to Julie. You know, what are we going to do next? Is there going to be follow-up? Are we going to have quarterly meetings? What if we have questions? And Julie goes, that's all good stuff, Fran. How would you like to just head all that up? So I did. I took responsibility for that program. I'm still responsible for that program. I handed it off a couple of times, and it didn't work out, so I took it back. And we still do liaisons. So, for example, when the Keller School Board is doing something nefarious or outrageous or wonderful, I kind of notify everybody in our group that lives in the Keller School District. You know, hey, you need to call your people. You need to go to a board meeting, whatever.
I have to ask, how many times do they do something wonderful, Fran? Be honest.
Well, you know, it's out there. There's a person.
No, sorry, Chandler. I'm not trying to get you in trouble, brother.
Your opinion's not mine.
I do have to say they do a really good job of educating children. Good to hear. I can't fault them for that. I don't always agree with their administrative and budgetary things, but
well, you know what? Honestly, Fran, I mean that's quite a statement. I mean that should be their number one purpose. And if they're doing that right, then at least they've got that priority. And I mean that's a huge compliment. Then it's all the other that anyway. So I go ahead. I will commence keeping my mouth shut. Hey, I love the mug.
I had to get a little Chandler action going here with the mug. Okay, so where was I? Okay, after liaisons, one time, it was somewhere around 2012, we had a speaker that talked about citizen advocates, and she was from Missouri, and she was teaching people how to go to the state house, you know, and be actual advocates for and against legislation and issues and whatnot. And Julie and I just looked at each other and said, we have to do this. So again, she said, Fran, will you do that? And I did, and I've been doing that ever since. So that's the thing I think I am most proud of, that we do as a group. We don't just have meetings, we do stuff. And our citizen advocate program has been just really effective. We've been doing it since the 2013 state legislative session. We mostly focus on state issues, but we also get involved in local and national as the need arises. We take trips to Austin with groups. We talk to legislators. We testify at hearings. We make phone calls, and we write emails and letters, and we have prayer for all of these efforts. And at the most, you know, even if we don't always win, we don't always get the bills passed we want passed. Sometimes we do, but not always. The thing is, we're teaching people how to do that, and we're getting citizens involved and engaged. And one of the things I want to go ahead.
I'm just thinking, if anybody's been really paying attention and adding up all the different things you just mentioned, it's a lot of stuff. That's crazy. So I just got to ask, for all that work, how much are you getting paid?
I get big bucks, really, really big bucks. I get hugs, and I get appreciative emails and notes and letters, and yeah, that's what it's all about.
Why? Okay, I heard in the very beginning you said you're passionate about liberty, right?
Yes.
And so is there anything else fueling this, or is it just the passion for liberty? Why are you passionate about liberty? What's going on in your heart that's driving you to do this?
Well, without liberty, there's just nothing else in life worthwhile. I think we're all experiencing that in the last few months with these virus lockdowns. You know, it hasn't stopped me from going anywhere I want to go, but a lot of people have given into that because somebody said, no, you're not allowed to leave your house except to go to the grocery store or whatever. And so, you know, we're actually finding out what it's like to not have liberty. And I just watched a video of Chris Ann Halls responding to Alan Dershowitz saying, you don't have the constitutional right not to have a vaccine plunged into your arm. I don't know if you've seen that video from Alan Dershowitz, but Chris Ann Hall is on fire about it, and she recorded a little 9-minute thing.
All right. Yeah. Well, hey, this whole thing, I'm just going to say I'm glad that the coronavirus isn't as bad as we thought it might have been, and it's such a nuanced situation. I think that the liberty issue is definitely, it's something. It's like when I saw you guys, y'all were early into standing for liberty on this issue before it was cool. Now it's cool. Everybody's talking about it. And I'm like, and when I heard that, I was like, oh, I don't know, man. I kind of, everybody's about to start dropping dead around me, you know? And so you have no choice but to trust the government. You guys are like, hey, let's put your foot on the brake there. Get ready. And so I don't know how I feel about the whole thing. It's just a wacky deal, but I know how I feel about property taxes. And we're going to get more into that here in just a minute. I want to go quick introduction with Robert again. I just want you to give a little bit more background than what I have for you, and then we're going to talk about how to eliminate property taxes on a level deeper than just protesting. So, all right. So, Robert, man, whenever I got connected with you guys, I'm trying to figure out the introduction. I don't know if it was with. Do you remember?
I actually do remember, man. I remember, you see, you know, we in Power Taxes, one of the things we've been focused on, passionate about, is property taxes. And I was trying to think of, you know, ways to try and help, you know, other people get more information in their hands. Because, you know, we have a great relationship with Fran, but I was also thinking, you know, what about all the other people who've never heard of us before, people who don't go to True Texas Project? And somehow or another, just doing Google searches, I don't know how it came out. I was looking for realtors, and your name came up as someone who helps people protest property taxes. So I'm like, oh, I got to talk to this guy. And the rest just took care from there. And I got to say, man, thanks so much for having me and Fran on. I mean, I've known you since last year. You are an awesome guy. You have a heart for people. This is not about politics for you. And really for us, it's not about politics either. We have certain political views. But, you know, like us, you know, you're just someone who is tired of seeing homeowners hurting and having their wallets tighten more and more, having to choose between needs and, you know, their homes when it comes to property taxes. So thanks so much for having me on here, man.
Yep, you got it. It's a pleasure. I'm every time I see you writing an article, I'm like, man, I'm just so thankful for the relationship. And so here's the thing, guys. There was something that we did with the Tarrant Appraisal District where we got involved in the Tarrant Appraisal District Board of Directors election.
That was awesome, dude, what you guys did. That was,
here's the thing. I'm happy to protest for everybody, but I don't actually. I'm not. I want people to protest on their own if they can. So just go find the video, and I tell you exactly how to do it from A to Z, step by step. But if you're not going to do it, call me. I'll do it for you for free. But I would like to see the need for all the protesting to be eliminated altogether. I would like to see us. Yeah, and so. On the state level, I've worked with Representative Matt Krause. Our kids played together, and I've gone to his kids' birthday parties and stuff like that. And so I saw him at these birthday parties. I was like, hey, Matt, how do we change the laws? Because protesting with a bunch of people, I've I got to see a bunch of flaws on a systemic level. And I said, look, there's some systemic issues that if we just passed a law, it would take care of things and solve problems. Well, so I started tackling it from that angle. Then I started looking locally, and I was thinking, okay, well, every appraisal district has certain ability to, to affect the system and to make changes in interpretations. And so I got involved locally here, and the core fabric of the appraisal district is dictated by the board of directors. So anyway, just mention all that to say, I was trying to bring awareness to the issue, and there was not one single news organization willing to post anything, publish anything, provide any kind of information to the people other than Empower Texans. And the name Empower Texans says it all. It says you guys are there to provide a voice for people. And you guys were the only ones willing to do anything. And you just basically republished something that I wrote, but I just really appreciate the awareness and the stance that you guys have. Is there anything else about you and where you've gotten to that you'd like to give people on your background before we hop into how to eliminate property taxes?
Well, I guess I'll tell people, for those of you who aren't familiar with Empower Texas, our mission is to promote self-governance in the Lone Star State. We're about amplifying the grassroots, which are, everyone who's not in really, professional politicians, people who are just worried about how am I going to pay my bills, how is this government official going to affect my life? How am I going to be able to live my life? People like you, Chandler, and you, Fran. So it was an honor for us to help amplify your voices when it came to the Tarrant Appraisal District election. And we're happy to help serve in any way we can.
Well, got some great people on the board. And by the way, the appraisal district themselves, they've made a lot of great, in my opinion, great decisions on how to handle things with this coronavirus situation going on. And I'm encouraged by it. All right, so let's get the party started here. Okay, first, I've just got to say, yeah, man, let's do it. I've just got to say that I do not care what your political affiliation is. If there was a more liberal group that was standing on the same issue, I'd be like, hey, man, let's fight shoulder to shoulder. It does not matter. You guys are the only ones that have popped up in my world that have said, hey, we support what you're doing, and let's join in the fight together. I am not against taxes. I'm not against property taxes, because what happens is those taxes go to fund some very, very good things that do some great things. For instance, educating the kids. Now, I'm very much against paying any more than I have to. And I'm against being forced to pay taxes and those taxes not being spent in ways that are fiscally responsible. And I'm seeing it happen all over the place. And so the only way to be able to have any change is to hold people accountable. And so I just want to say right out, the only way to completely eliminate all property tax is to find some other way to fund these programs. And so if you get rid of all the property taxes, the groups out there that are advocating for that, I've seen them talk about implementing a consumption tax or a flat tax or increased sales taxes or some other kind of tax. Okay,
or
so
value-added tax.
A value-added tax. Okay, so these are all areas I don't know anything about. I'd be more than happy to spend a moment talking about this stuff, but I'll just say that's not the road that we're going to spend the majority of our time talking about it. In my view, Texas is the best state. We may not have the best. I think Alaska's probably got the best tax setup in general. They actually pay their citizens. I don't. Rather than getting in the details on that, I'll just say I think that the rough edges need to be smoothed out on our property tax system itself. But our taxing philosophy and principles here in Texas have helped to make our state as great as it is. And so I'm not interested in fundamentally changing everything. Like, I'm not going to sign up for an income tax. That's the only way to get rid of the property tax, really. There's one of those other ones. But so guys, what are some, did I hit all of the other areas of just fundamentally, the ways that you could fundamentally change the taxing system to get that revenue from a different avenue? Or what other ideas have you heard? And are any of them viable that you think that we should probably give second consideration to before we come back on the other side of the fence and just talk about how to work within the system that's already there?
You want to start?
Sure. Well, actually, it's very interesting you mentioned that. I think a lot of people are in line with what you're saying, Chandler. Most folks are willing to pay taxes because we want things like police and fire and education. Now, the funny thing is, whenever you talk about trying to reduce property taxes, what are the things elected officials bring up? Police and fire. Fran, you were there in the last Texas legislative session where taxpayers were going, to the state senate and to their state reps in committee hearings saying, reduce our taxes. What were you hearing because local officials were going there too. What were you hearing them saying down there?
Oh, the world as we know it will end if you limit our ability to collect revenue from property taxes. We saw a whole parade of police people, fire people, mayors, city councilmen, school boards, county commissioners come in with the same message. I mean, literally, the world as we know it will end if you pass this bill. There were maybe 2 or 3 municipal governments there that had the opposite opinion, but the majority of them absolutely, they want to raise as much revenue as they possibly can.
Yeah, and I remember this was a bit before you and I met, Chandler, but we were covering those testimonies. I remember one of the finance administrator from the city of Dallas was telling state senators that if they implemented what you've talked about before, property tax reform, putting a 3.5% trigger, if most cities and counties want to raise property taxes 3.5% more than the previous year, they were saying we're going to have to cut police and fire. And do you remember that exchange State Senator Kelly Hancock had with that official, Fran, where Hancock was like, "Well, what's your total budget?" And they were like, "I don't remember the exact figures." They're like, "Oh, about $3 billion." Again, not exact. He's like, "Okay." And what percentage of that is police and fire? And I think they say it came up again, not exact figures. Wasn't it something like 10% or something like that, or some figure? And he was like, "So when it's time to make cuts, the first place you're going to go is police and fire. There's nowhere else you can go." Remember that exchange, Fran?
I do. And do you remember my testimony in the 2019?
Oh, man. Please,
I sat there all day long. I was there at 9 o'clock when the hearing started. This was the Senate hearing on SB2, which was the 3.5% or 2.5% cap on revenue increases. So I sit there all day waiting my turn to testify, listening to all these city and county people saying, "Oh no, you were going to have to fire our policemen, lay off fire people, lay off school teachers." So finally, around 6:30, close to 7 o'clock, I finally got called to testify, and I had my little printed testimony all printed out that I had written the day before, and I got up there and I took it and I went. I was going to say that, but now, after listening to all this, I looked Paul Betancourt in the face and I said, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore."
Awesome.
Wow.
You know what?
I just told him, I said, we as families and taxpayers, we have needs as well. And we can't just go tell somebody to raise our revenue by 8%. Because we want to do all of these things on this budget. We can't do that, but that's what you as elected people are telling us as taxpayers. You have to come up with this extra 6, 7, 8% money every year because we as a city want to put in a golf course or a water slide or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I think that's if I can correct something I said earlier, the question State Senator Hancock asked was like, okay, if we introduce this, limitation how much you can raise taxes each year, you, Dallas, are saying that'll require cuts of around 5%. That was the response. Again, not exact figures. And he was like, so for cuts that you're saying you have to make that small, you're gonna have to draft police and fire. So I just wanted to correct myself. I said something incorrect earlier. Second thing is, Chandler, you've experienced the same thing as Fran, right? I mean, we're hearing from all over, taxpayers are hurting. That's the problem here.
Yeah, absolutely. People are getting taxed out of their home. And I know in Dallas County, property tax values went up like crazy. In Tarrant County, they didn't go up tremendously. Some people's did, but most people's didn't. And it's just insane. There's a disconnect between the elected officials. And I say elected officials, let's be specific. school board trustees, school boards, cities, and county officials that are adopting these revenues. So let's do this. I like Fran's take. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, because that's where we need to get more people mad as hell that aren't going to take it anymore, that are going to stand up and follow in y'all's footsteps and take action to go out there and kick some butt and take some names. And here's the thing. You don't have to get all mad about it. All you have to do is just hop in your car and drive down to the appropriate meeting and just show your face. And we're going to give some detail on exactly what to happen, what you do. Let me just give a little bit of background and information, and then we're going to dive deeper into it. Okay.
Please.
Man, I want to go down the avenue of talking about budget meetings, talking about where the money goes, and how you can affect that stuff. But before I do, I want to talk about something kind of interesting. And I kind of sprung this on Robert last minute, but Robert's got so much knowledge of everything. We're going to talk about a way to actually eliminate school taxes, and we're going to get into that. But first, people need to understand where your taxes go. When you pay your property taxes, people don't understand that it actually goes to local entities. That money is not going to the state at all. Is that correct?
Right. Absolutely correct.
Okay.
That's how your local governments are funded.
So on this house,
Fran, go ahead.
Usually it's a minimum of 5 taxing entities. Like yours there, Chandler. You've got the city, the county, the school board, the hospital, and the college. Almost everyone has at least 5. And some people have additional special taxing districts.
Gotcha. Okay. So whenever you pay your property tax bill, a portion of it goes to each one of these entities to fund these different programs or to fund the revenues of each entity, right?
Correct.
The biggest out of all these, Robert, which one's the biggest?
Let's see. The biggest out of all those are going to be your, drum roll please, your school districts, the independent school districts. Those usually take up about 60% of the average property tax bill for homeowners. It goes to the school districts, and it's been that way since 1993, when the state started to shift the burden of funding schools away from the state budget and onto local taxpayers. And a big part of that was what we call Robin Hood, which all that is taking money from some of the wealthiest. And Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm not explaining this correctly. What we're doing is, with Robin Hood, the way it works, you take money from the wealthy areas, the wealthiest school districts, take a portion of that cash, use it to fund and shift money over to some of the poorer school districts. Is that pretty much right, Fran?
It's educational Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So out of the school portion of the property taxes, there are 2 different types of taxes in that. One of them is called M&O, and what's the other one called?
INS.
Interest and Sinking Fund. INS.
Okay.
That's right.
Which you could just rename that the debt fund. So M&O basically allegedly is supposed to just like keep on the lights, keep teachers teaching. INS is pay off the credit card.
Okay, so M&O stands for maintenance and operations. You said that's paying teachers, that's keeping the lights on, that's and then it's INS, right? Is the other side of that. And so what again is that?
That's based. Go ahead, Fran.
It's I and S, not
I and S. Sorry, I and S. Got it.
Interest and Sinking Fund. That's what the I and the S stand for.
Okay.
But it's debt. It's like your mortgage. You know, it's the debt that they take on to build the buildings or to buy large equipment. And these are generally things that have to be proposed to the voters. So the voters vote on that debt through the school bond elections.
Okay, got it. So, say it again.
I was going to say it's important to remember. So everyone, when there is a school bond on the ballot that you're voting for, realize that whether whether or not it's a decision to be made, whether it's good or not, different issue. But realize if you vote for it, you're voting for your taxes to be higher or to remain at a certain level for a period of time, because that's how these buildings get paid off.
Okay. So this is important because it was eye-opening to me whenever I learned about this. The INS that's the money that goes to actually pay for the bond program that we all vote for, right? So whenever you see all the signs out on the side of the road, it says, and they dumb it down to the stupidest level possible. They say, "Do you support teachers? If yes, vote yes. If you do, vote yes," right? And so it avoids all analysis and scrutiny on this. And okay, this is something that Ross Kessick he's with Empower Texas, my video camera. He's with Empower Texas. He came up to my office one day, spent probably 4 hours just educating me on this whole thing. Okay, yeah. So when you see the signs out there on the side of the road, and it says "Vote yes for this bond," do y'all have any idea who's funding that who organizes the campaign for that? Who funds all that stuff?
Fran?
The school board does. And if you look up their financial reports or ask the question, they will tell you we spent X number of dollars on signs, we spent X number of dollars on videos and whatever. But yeah, the taxing entity that is proposing the bond spends the money on the marketing of the bond. Now, it is not legal for them to use taxpayer money for electioneering, but it depends on how you define electioneering, because as long as it's whatever they're putting out there is purely factual, and they never really say vote yes or vote no, but they do say things like you said, yeah. If you support teachers, then this bond is going to help teachers. Well, that's a roundabout way of saying vote for this bond. But as long as it's factual information that they're putting out and they never try to tell people vote this way or that way, then they can use taxpayer money for that.
And that's what, sorry, go ahead.
The signs that you see saying vote this way or that way are usually from PACs that have been organized to try to support or defeat the bond.
And that's one of the most insidious things, like, Chandler, as you're pointing out, using this argument of, do you support teachers? I mean, that is, to me, that's a form of emotional abuse. To say that somehow if we don't build this huge building, which, by the way, I'm aware of school bonds that funded big buildings that didn't have air conditioning, so they had to do another bond saying, oh, by the way, we need to do air conditioning. We exactly plan this out. It's a false choice. Of course we support teachers. The question is this building, at the price you're proposing, we, the taxpayers, pay for it, is this necessary now? Is there a more efficient way to build this building? Is there a better quality building we can get? Do we need this now, or is this something we should plan out for 10 years down the road? To use teachers as shields to tax taxpayers more, to me, is morally reprehensible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, so there's something else scandalous in this whole thing that somebody made me aware of, is that in those PACs, and PAC stands for Political Action Committee or something like that, right? Okay, in those PACs, somehow the contractors that end up getting the contracts that build the buildings play a role in helping to fund the PAC or organize this whole campaign effort or something like that. Am I correct on that?
Oh boy.
Robert wrote about that last fall.
All right.
Yeah. So we
hey, can you find a link to that? We'll put it on this post, and we'll put it on my blog.
Sure. Yes. Let me give a brief explanation while I talk. So we at Empower Texans, you
don't have to give me the link right now. We'll do it later. Go ahead.
Yeah. So at some point I'll provide the link. So we did an investigation into Keller ISD bonds, because they were putting another bond out there saying, hey, we got to build more stuff. And in the past, when you look at these financial reports, because the financial reports are openly available, where you can find out who is donating money to what PACs, because you'll have PACs for the bond, as well as you'll have PACs against the bond. Interestingly enough, the PACs against the bond don't usually have as much money as the PACs for the bond. You look at the donors for the pro-bond PACs, you'll start seeing some of the companies that previously or afterwards get contracts to build these buildings. Conflict of interest, maybe?
And architects.
Oh, yeah, architects. BLK Architects, that's a name that kept popping up in my research. And it was interesting, because if you look at the amount they donate to the PAC is minuscule compared to the amount they would get from taxpayers.
Right.
when they were pushing for this. So,
and that's only because of limitations on campaign finance.
That's crazy. Okay, so when you have this whole campaign going on where they're playing on our emotions, saying, "Do you vote yes for this if you support teachers?" and then the funding for the actual campaign, probably I would bet that a lot of people involved in the campaign don't even know that the contractors are helping fund this whole operation. They're going to get the contract on the back end of this thing. So you could have good-hearted people out there campaigning, thinking, "Well, I support teachers. Yes, I'm passionate about education. Then this thing should happen," without realizing they're actually playing a part in helping this contractor get the contract at the end of the day. Is that is that a fair statement, or am I going out on a limb there?
Yeah, they don't really. In my investigations, never seen really these companies come out to the voters and say, "Hey, we're supporting this bond so we can build buildings." They don't normally advertise that. But what I did find in my investigation, it was either last year. I did find that some of these companies were donating supplies to teachers, and in the the gift line where the little piece of paper saying "to you from," they'd say "from your friends at so and so corporation." All these companies that typically profit from these bonds, and I looked at them going, "Oh, this is another form of marketing. This is just another way to try and build rapport with the teachers to get them on their side. Yes, we're for you." I was like shaking my head, going, and also I was wondering, wait. How come teachers need donations of markers, pencils, a whole bunch of other supplies that you can get at Walmart? Why do they need these donations? Where's all the taxpayer money that Keller property taxpayers? I mean, okay, I can give you a factoid real quick. According to the Tarrant Appraisal District, the average homeowner's property tax bill from Keller ISD from 2013 to 2019 went up 38%. Why do teachers need donations of school supplies?
Yeah, somebody even told me there was they got to the end of the year or whatever, and they were having a hard time finding places to spend the money, so they furnished this office with like $50,000 worth of furniture, and it was just some kind of gross situation. But all right, so here's the thing: what we've been doing is just kind of laying the foundation for what we're getting to, which is this. All right, so so far we've talked about where property taxes go, which local governments get them. And we've identified that the schools get the largest portion of those property taxes. Inside the school tax, there's two different elements. One is for maintenance and operations. The other one is the I&S fund, which is basically the fund that where the money that is going towards paying off what the voters voted in for the $300 million bond program to go build all the buildings. And then that bond program that whole campaign is there are contractors that are going to get some money at the end of the day on that thing. It's just kind of a dirty process, right? Or there's some lines that need to be cleaned up. I don't know enough about it. It's one reason I want to have you guys on here is to speak to some of that. But so let's back out of that for just a second. You started talking about the Robin Hood thing, and I've heard it called recapture, right? And so this is an element of the school property tax revenue system. This is how this works. At one point, somebody from your organization laid out a plan for me that seemed feasible on how you could actually eliminate all, if not at least a portion, if like one half of those property taxes. And so for the school districts, Robert, can you give us just some kind of brief overview on the strategy to actually eliminate some of those property taxes and just some details on that?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about it. The guy who originally spoke to both of us about it was Ross Kessig, the president of Empower Texans, and as everyone knows, he's currently on temporary medical leave. Our prayers go out to him. We hope he returns soon, so that way you can have the real expert on a show like this with you. I know Ross would love to be here, and he'd love to talk about this. So actually, what you're referring to is a study published by Texas Public Policy Foundation. They're the premier public policy foundation in Texas. And in 2018, they came out with a study that said, if the state legislature, state of Texas, limited growth and spending to 4%, everything above that, because, for years up until recently, state of Texas is taking in so much more taxpayer money because the economy keeps growing, so the coffers keep filling up more and more and more. And so the state would just increase spending, not going to deficit spending, but just increasing it. TPPF said, wait, okay, if you just limit growth to just 4% and take the rest of the surplus and pour it into the school districts, buying down school property tax rates, in about 10 years, Robin Hood would basically be gone. And in the 11th year, school property taxes being eliminated entirely, potentially. And so it'd be this, decade-long process. And, Fran, did you hear about this plan line? I think you did. This was something the grassroots tried to get the state legislature to move on, but didn't really see much action. Am I right?
Yeah. Hardly anybody took up the plan. That it was from Texas Public Policy Foundation. I don't recall that any actual legislation was filed, but a lot of people were talking about it. The drawbacks were that it's hard to get legislators to stop spending, so that they were only being allowed 4% a year increase in their budgets, and in my opinion, they need to make that number like 0 or negative. But the other thing was the 11-year thing. People were demanding relief because property taxes are so out of control. They're like, we can't wait 11 years to make this happen. Something needs to be done now. And what we got in 2019 was House Bill 3, which dumped $5 billion into the education system so that local property taxes could be compressed.
Yeah. And so real quick, by the way, when I say, eliminate school property tax, I'm referring only to the M&O portion.
Right.
The INS, paying off the credit card, that would still remain because, you have to pay off that debt. But the M&O portion, if you follow this plan over the course of 11 years, it's possible you just eliminate the M&O property tax entirely. And House Bill 3, Fran, that you referred to, pouring $5 billion of the state's surplus that we had in 2019 into the school district to buy down property tax rates. All that did, as we've now discovered, and I've got data from the Metroplex area, which we're now releasing, of what happened in 2019. All that did was sort of control the growth of what property tax bills want to do. Let me share some information right now. In 2019, Fort Worth ISD's average property tax bill for homeowners grew in 1 year from 2018 to 2019, grew almost 5%. For Castleberry ISD in Tarrant, it grew nearly 13%. Dallas, let's see, Duncanville ISD grew over 4%. Ferris ISD grew over 28%.
And you're talking about the revenue.
I'm talking about the average property tax bill for homeowners.
The average property tax bill for homeowners is growing that much. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Huh.
So even with House Bill 3, you still saw very few, if any, in the Metroplex area. I can't speak for the whole state of Texas. Very few property tax bills actually went down. Some of them kept going up. Some not as much as they could have, and others it's still like, whoa, that's a huge jump still.
And I live in the Keller ISD, and Keller lowered their rate by 10 cents, which is a big, number for tax rates. But my property tax bill still went up because of the valuation. So you're right. Even though it compressed the rates that they were charging, most people's tax bills just keep going up and up and up.
And this is why people. Sorry, Chandler, go ahead.
Man, I was just going to say we're gonna get into exactly how we can play a part in making sure the revenues of these local governments isn't just out of control, and revenues, I should say, their budgets, because the local entities establish the budget, and then that budget has to be fulfilled.
Well, yeah. Let's see that whiteboard.
What do you got here?
Let's see that whiteboard, Fran.
If I could use my very high-tech communication device here, Carl Rove would be proud of me.
Hold on, I'm going to give you center stage if I can.
Yeah, let's give her the spotlight here, Chandler.
Hold on, I'm going to take me and you out.
Okay. First of all, I want you to focus right there. Property taxes equals government spending. That's where property taxes go. Cities, counties, school districts spend your tax money. That's what we need to be focusing on. Look at what these people are doing with your money. And if I can send one message today, it's please pay attention to what these municipal governments are doing with your money. Property tax equals spending. If you want pocket taxes to go down, spending has to.
Amen. You're absolutely right, Fran. If you want, the only way taxes go down is the spending goes down. And we're actually in an interesting situation right now. Unfortunately, because of the government-mandated economic shutdown in response to coronavirus, you have over 2 million Texans right now unemployed. And that's also affected, tax revenues. Glenn Hagar, Texas Comptroller, said, yeah, we're losing a lot of revenue. We either need to increase taxes or cut spending. And Governor Greg Abbott is clearly signaled right now, like, okay, the mantra today is to cut spending. So really, we're hoping, and unfortunately, we're not seeing this yet, that county and city and school districts start following the same path, like we've got to cut spending, especially school districts, because, throughout this time, Fran, during the coronavirus situation, they've not had in-person classes, right?
Right, but they're still paying teachers. So, they still have pretty much, I think, the same expenses they had when they had children in the seats. I don't know how it's affected their revenue stream, because that depends on children in the seats as well. But you're right, Robert. All of these municipal governments are going to be scrambling for revenue because sales tax revenues are going to be down. And for most of them, they only have two sources of revenue. It's sales taxes and property taxes. Right. So if they're not getting it from sales, they're going to be looking to get it from property taxes.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk for a second about this. This is what Fran is talking about. This is the equation. It's your property value minus whatever exemptions you're afforded, multiplied by the tax rate equals the tax bill. Okay,
so you don't have to do math right now, are you, brother?
No.
I don't do math.
We don't need. Very few people get to do math in this whole situation. Here's what happens. So the school districts, the cities, the counties, they basically just dream up whatever they want to spend, right?
Yeah. Correct.
After they get the value, after the appraisal district comes up with the value, then they dream up whatever they want to spend, and that tells them what the tax rate needs to be, right?
Correct. And It's also important to note, when the appraisal district tells them what the value is, they also tell all these local governments the tax rate they would have to adopt if they don't want to, on average, increase homeowners' tax bills more than the previous year. And that's called now the no new revenue rate.
So what I want to focus on for the rest of this time, if we can, is how we can affect this. Because here's the thing. What your tax bill is, this is what those local entities are dreaming up. This is their budget. If this was, if this was zero, we wouldn't have any. It wouldn't matter what they value our property at all. The appraisal district, their role would be pointless. What the budget that is adopted by the school board, the budget that's adopted by the city and by the county, that's what drives this whole thing. That's what creates the need for the bill in the first place, right? So,
absolutely.
All right. So, Fran, I think that you're the person that I've heard of that has gone to more of these meetings than anybody else. What do you have there on your deal?
Okay. So this is just kind of the chronology of how things happen. Can you read that?
I can.
Yeah, break it down for us, Fran. Break it down.
So, number one, appraisal values are set. That's what's happening right now. And we're protesting. But when all that's said and done, then the appraisal district tells every taxing unit, you have X million dollars of taxable property in your jurisdiction. The second thing that happens is they start holding budget workshops, and some of the jurisdictions are starting to do that. That becomes basically a wish list. Here's what we would like our budget to be. We want to spend on all these different things. Then they get their appraisal values, and they set a proposed budget and a tax rate. And I think you're right, Chandler. They basically are coming up. This is what we would like to spend. So what tax rate do we need to develop to apply to that valuation to get to this budget number? And it ought to be the other way around.
Absolutely.
You know, it ought to be, okay, what tax rate can we apply to give our taxpayers the most relief and still meet our needs? And there's a big difference between wish lists and needs. But anyway, they will propose a budget and a tax rate. If that tax rate is above the effective rate, or as Robert said, it's now called the no new revenue or no new tax rate. If it is above that, they are required by law to hold 2 public hearings. 2, and the public is invited to go and testify. As you said, I go to a lot of those. I'm typically the only person that shows up, or I might be one of 2. I remember once at the city of Fort Worth, I was one of about 8, but all the 7 other people wanted the city to spend more money. I was telling them to spend less, and the others were wanting more. And then the last thing that happens is they adopt that budget and they adopt that tax rate, and then that becomes the tax rate for the following year's taxes. So
okay. So we're establishing the values right now, but the amount of money that ends up on somebody's value notice form, that's just an estimate. We actually have no idea what somebody's tax bill is going to be until it goes through this process, and then it's actually determined after the cities and counties adopt their budget, and then they figure out what they have to charge us in order to be able to satisfy that budget, right?
Well, that's technically not quite right. They propose a budget. They can't adopt the budget until the tax rate is set and the hearings are held and all of that.
Got it.
They generally do that in September, but they are proposing the budgets right now, and then they'll get their valuations and they'll have to adjust that budget. This year particularly, they're just going to have to find ways to adjust it down. In previous years, just like the state, money was flowing, property values are up, the economy's good. They weren't really pushed to cut those budgets. This year, I just don't see any way around it. And we're just going to have to speak up as citizens and make sure they do that.
And the real sad thing about this whole thing, Fran, is that you and other grassroots leaders like you were warning legislators, you've been warning city officials and county officials for years, like, hey, the good times are not going to roll on forever. Not that, the economy will forever disappear, but, you always have periods of growth and then periods of decrease. And if you don't prepare yourself, the periods of decrease are really going to hurt. You've been warning them for years, and now they've been hit with a cold splash of hard reality. And sorry, go ahead, Chandler.
I'm sorry. I want to get to the nuts and bolts of this, because people are mad as hell and they don't want to take it anymore, and they need to know what to do to take action to actually eliminate the need for these property taxes and help rein this in, so that they have a voice from the other side of people saying, instead of saying, hey, just keep spending, somebody's saying, hey, let's just take a little longer and see if there's something we can cut out of the budget, see if this is actually necessary for us to spend money on. So Fran, you mentioned there's budget workshops, and then there's 2 hearings before any of this stuff is actually adopted, right? Okay.
That's right.
Can people go to the budget workshops?
Yes, and if you can't go, they're usually available on a video feed at some point. So I would encourage people to go to them, although they're very confusing. I go sometimes and I listen, but I just I don't have a brain for figures. But you can go, and you can get copies of the proposed budget and analyze it and dig through it and try to figure out where that money is going. And that's so important. Last week, Empower Texans did their town hall about talking about tax relief. And Joanne Fleming gave some really good tips on things to look for with municipal governments where they could cut. Like she said, she knew of one government that had an arborist on the payroll to take care of the trees, I guess, in the city parks. But she was basically saying if it's money for something that is not within the proper role of that government, then it shouldn't be in the budget. And if they need to hire an arborist occasionally, they can subcontract that out to someone.
Exactly.
There's lots of things in these budgets. They will always tell you when their revenue is threatened, oh, we're going to have to cut police, we're going to have to cut fire, we're going to have to cut teachers. That's just playing on your emotions. There's plenty of other places they can cut.
All right. So Fran, you mentioned budget workshop, 2 hearings. If we're just going to give people the most simple, highest effective course of action to go, what would you say they need to show up to? Which one of these meetings would be the most effective meeting to show up to?
The most effective will be the public hearings, because at the budget workshops, all you can do is listen. You usually can't provide input or ask questions or anything. But the hearings are required by law, and anybody can show up and speak for or against the proposed budget and the proposed tax rate.
Okay.
This usually happens in September. That's what I wanted to say.
No, you're reading my mind, because I want to give people the takeaways. It does no good if we just get on here and get mad and get people all riled up and say, hey, you can go out there and eliminate property taxes without giving them some action. So what you're saying is they can just go to the meetings. They usually happen in September. How do they find out when the meetings happen? Where do they go? How can you get that information?
Every city, county, and school board has a website, and somewhere on that website will be the meetings of the Board of Trustees or the City Council or the County Commissioners. Just find that, look at the meetings, look at the agendas. They have to post their agendas, I think it's 72 hours in advance, but just be aware that it's coming up. Late August, early September is when it all happens, because there's a deadline in there as to where they have to have these rates adopted.
And if I can just add, for those 2 things, when it comes to school districts, I started tracking this stuff. I found that actually, last year, it's usually for some reason, there are school districts where in the May and June and July, they already are passing their tax rates. So I would say, for those of you concerned about 6% of your taxes, go check on your school districts now. It was the weirdest thing for me to encounter last year. I was like, because everyone else is doing it in August, why are they doing it this early? And the other thing I would ask is, anyone who's in the rural parts of Texas who are watching this, you may find that they're supposed to post this. Some school district websites or county websites are so poorly designed that it's difficult to tell where the announcements are or where the information, where their meetings are. Just make a phone call and don't
call them up.
Yeah. Just call them up.
Do you think that any of these entities know when those meetings are going to be right now, or do they have to wait until 72 hours before the meeting is held to find out?
They know. They know.
Well, okay. It'll happen at one of their regular meetings. So, for example, Fort Worth meets every Monday evening. So they'll designate one of those Monday evenings. It has to happen at a regular meeting. It can't be a special. So find out when your taxing entity meets on a normal basis anyway. And
okay, so you can go to the website. You can find out when the taxing entity meets, and then I have a feeling that either my company or Empower Texans or somebody's going to put together a website that has when all these meetings are. In fact, I've got a spreadsheet that has when every single entity meets. I just don't know the single date when the budget meetings are. Yeah, I've got it all mapped out, because when we were doing the appraisal district election stuff, that's when all those votes would happen, is at those meetings. And so we were trying to just inform people, and it's like, man, it's like playing whack-a-mole. Just to get your hands on the dates. It was crazy.
Because they're not used to citizens looking for this stuff.
Well, that's the thing. But here's the thing. We've got to be able to make it really easy to say, hey, here's when the budget meeting is for your area. Go, and here's an email alert. Go to it. So let me ask this, Fran. Whenever somebody shows up to a budget meeting, what are they going to expect? What's it look like? What time of day is it? Is it in the evening, or what's it like just showing up?
Most of them are in the evening. Tarrant County meets in the morning every Tuesday at 10 a.m. But most cities and school districts meet at an evening hour. When you show up, everybody will have different rules about what is required to testify. Some of them make you sign up online ahead of time. Some of them you sign up in person when you get there. you will have to put down your name and your address and what you're testifying for or against something. And then when the time comes for testimony, they will call on people one by one. They generally limit you to 2 or 3 minutes. So, use your time wisely. I always like to tell people to prepare something ahead of time and write it down. Try not to read it word for word, but it puts it in your mind so that you don't forget. At least have bullet points so you make sure that you hit all the major points you want to do. A lot of people are intimidated by this, but you don't need to be. It's the purpose. Remember, these people work for you. It's not the other way around. And you have a right to go and say whatever you think about whatever it is, and they are required and obligated to listen to you.
I'm go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, absolutely. Folks, remember, they're discussing how much of your money they're going to take. So, you're the boss. And I would say, like, if you go to the budget workshops, you're not understanding what they're talking about, ask them. Don't be shy about it. I'm not saying raise your fist and like, yeah! No, just simply ask them a question and, try and get an explanation because it's your money they're asking for.
So I think for me, I would feel like a fish out of water showing up to one of these things for the first time, not having an idea of what to say. Robert, you're saying go and ask some questions. Fran, you're saying write down a little prepared statement and show up with something in mind to say. So let's start with you, Fran. Fran, what if I wanted to show up? Look, I'm just pissed about my property tax bill going up. I'm sick and tired of seeing so many people out there getting taxed out of their home and being put in a serious financial bind because their property tax bill is going up. So my perspective is I just want to show up to the meeting and make sure that we're not just passing stuff willy-nilly and somebody's giving a little bit more oversight to this and there's actually some scrutiny on what's in the budget or what's not in the budget, just like I do with my house and my personal family. We're not just out spending money on whatever we want. So Fran, if I wanted to prepare for a meeting like that and say something, what would I say? How would I prepare? And what's something effective to do?
Well, that's a hard one because for people like me, I just can't get into the weeds of a $40 million budget for a city. I just can't handle that. I try to find other people who can and advise me, and they can say, okay, this expenditure for this thing here, this $5 million is stupid, but if you can't do that, at least what I do is I go to the public hearings and I just keep saying, it's too much. You've got to cut this budget. Our taxes are too high. It's killing people. We're losing our homes. Last fall, I got into an argument with Glenn Whitley about it. They're not supposed to communicate back and forth with you when you testify, but he did. And
he often does.
He often does. And basically what he told me was I was complaining to the wrong group because the school district gets most of my taxes, and whatever taxes I pay to the county, it's because of the state's unfunded mandate. So I should go talk to Matt Krause. And
okay. So look, I think that what you said is brilliant because I kind of operate the same way. If there's some area that I'm not familiar with, you could go in there and just say, look, guys, that's too much. Please cut more. This is not good enough. You've got to find a way to get it down. And without having to know anything about budgets or without having the ability to do any math, you can at least just provide a voice of somebody that's actually having to pay the bill to say, hey, look, this isn't good. Robert, what kind of questions? Give me an example. If somebody's going to write down some questions and prepare to go to a meeting and try and ask people questions to hold people accountable to try and make sure that they're not overspending, what are some questions or what are some things that people can say?
Well, for me, it's something like, so if you go to one of these budget workshops and they mention well, I'll just throw out something. They mention something like a computer program. We're going to spend $50 million on this when we spent $10 million last year. It may be perfectly fine for me to ask my city councilman, why? What is this program? What's the benefit? And why such a dramatic increase in spending? In fact, I'd also add that everyone, yes, you should go to speak publicly. And I would personally also recommend that the conversations to cut spending and deal with your taxes really should begin now. You should start the conversations with your city councilmen, your county commissioners now, because the staff of these local governments, they're already working on this stuff. They're already churning the numbers. And, it's amazing what I've seen both in city of Fort Worth and city of Dallas. I've encountered elected officials talking about how, the city staff, like in Dallas, they like hide stuff from elected officials. We're seeing that right now with a bridge with the soccer fields that State Senator Royce West's son wants to build. And with Fort Worth, there's frustrations with city staff do over there. So you need to start the conversation.
On the Trinity River Project.
Yeah. So you need to start talking with your elected officials now, so you can start talking to staff to get the ball moving. Say, hey, my voters are talking to me. We need to start moving the ball this way. So that way, it's not just public speaking time and all these people show up out of nowhere to try and force a last man action. That can work, but I would say let's start the ball rolling now. Start talking with your elected officials, and don't, as Joanne, as Fran mentioned before, don't reach for the hammer. You never met your county commission before. You never met your city council before. You never met your school board member before. Probably not going to get far if you start off with a shouting match saying, "Arr!" You never met them before. Just start a conversation, express your concerns, and move on from there. But hold them accountable. And don't back down from what you're saying.
I'm gonna back up for a second, because you mentioned look. What I think, for me to feel comfortable to show up at a meeting, in a meeting I've never shown up to, where you got elected officials, it feels like a very formal environment. I've got to put down my actual name with an actual address. There are some elements of this that seem a little intimidating. I think that just knowing about it in advance can help me know what to prepare for, so that it's not a surprise, and it takes the intimidation factor out of it. The second thing is knowing what to say. Fran, you said if you're going to prepare a statement and show up, you don't have to know anything about anything to just stand up and say, guys, this is too much money. You can do better than that. Please go figure out a way how to reduce it. That's a great statement. Robert, what you're saying is you go prepare some questions, but the only question you have to say is, why? Why is this necessary? Why are we spending this much money on this? And get them to explain themselves. Here's what it reminded me of. Whenever we had our children, my wife was going into labor at the hospital. I didn't know anything about anything. So and all I did was I started, with the first one I learned, because that's the burden of the first child. It's like the parents are just cutting their teeth on the first child. But I learned about the eye ointment and the vitamin K shot they get and the different vaccines they get and the umbilical cord blood and all that stuff. And I'm like, there's a stance and a belief. There's like skin to skin contact. There's like all these different things about that some people believe is really important, some people think are not important. And so I thought, I don't know how I feel about all these things. So the next time we had our next baby, all I did was I did exactly what you're talking about. And I just said, hey, tell me, why do you do the eye goop? Why do you do the vitamin K shot? And all I did was do that. And it just let them know I am not stupid, and I'm not just going to stand there and let you do whatever you want with my baby. You're going to have to, I might fully agree with everything that you're proposing. I might be totally okay with it, but it's going to just let people know I'm not going to sit idly by like sheep and get herded right through in whatever just passed. So these little bitty scripts, I think that they're powerful. You just get them. Tell me why. Why do you have to do this? Answer that question. Why? It's not up to you to know, to be the expert. It's up to them. We expect them to do the homework. We expect them to have solid justification, and they've got to have an explanation. The other side is, hey, you can do better. You can do better. Go back to work. Figure it out.
Yeah, and don't let them, because some people, if you ask why, they may start talking down to you. You don't have to put up with that. And if they aren't explaining it in a clear, concise way for you to understand, then you have to ask them, you need to break this down so I can understand it. It is your responsibility to teach me. I am the taxpayer.
There we go. We have the vote.
Yeah. And if they aren't willing to do that, then maybe it's time to really question this expense.
All right. That's cool. That's great. Look, we're allowed to be stupid in this. They're supposed to be the experts, right? We're allowed to be the one that say, hey, you've obviously done your research. I need you to explain it to me, because now we're the ones that have the standard. They work for us. We're the ones in charge. We say who we vote for. But if we vote for them and we don't ask questions, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. All right. Okay. I got another question. Oh, I've got a belief that I want to test with you guys and see. how spot on I am with this. Because whenever we were dealing with the whole TAD election, and I was looking some of these city council members in the eye, and I was looking at some of these board of trustees in the eye. I actually stood up in a board meeting where there were representatives from tons of different cities and ISDs there. And I turned around and I said, look, guys, it was just like my opportunity to sound off. So, I opened my mouth and said, you guys got to get your budgets in check. Don't just be passing crap. And I kind of came down on them. And then I was thinking about the one-on-one conversations I've had with these people. And it's like, the majority of them are good people. They mean well. They're volunteer jobs. They're not getting paid. They're trying to serve well. And so I started digging into it a little deeper. And here's my belief. My belief is that the school board members and the city council members might possibly not know what they're doing. They get voted in, and then when they get voted in, the administrative area, let's say the administration of the city, just starts telling them, hey, you guys got to vote this in. They have these budget workshops, and they tell them all the reasons why they must vote to increase spending. And the elected officials just sitting there like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. So, yeah, I mean, I've got it. They're the expert. They've done the homework. So, yeah, sure, I'll vote yes for it. Sounds good to me. And then what ends up happening is they have these public hearings, and Fran's the only person in the whole stinking area that shows up. And so they've got the administrative team that has deep knowledge of all the inner workings of this stuff. They're getting that side of the argument, but they're not getting it from the actual taxpayer. And so there's just no reason for them to not vote yes. And they could be great people, good hearts, trying to do their best, but they're just operating kind of like we are. What is that? Am I on target there, or am I off in left field?
You are on target, especially with the part about them going along with whatever the administrator or the finance manager tells them that they ought to do. We see a lot of that. And I don't blame them for that because you're right. They're not experts. We elect them to represent us, but they're not budget experts or experts on all the various things that they need to be. So they have to depend on their staff to advise them. So I think there's a lot of that goes on, but also it just shocks the heck out of them if people show up and say, no, I don't think you should adopt this budget, or no, this tax rate is too high, because nobody ever does it. And I wish that when I go to these things, I could get a whole bevy of people to go with me, even if they didn't testify, or if they were just sitting there holding a sign that said my tax is too high.
Are they allowed to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Or a sticker on your shirt. We often put stickers on our shirts.
So you don't have to sign in. You don't have to give your address. You could just make a sign and hold it up in the back of the room that says, keep my taxes lower.
Taxes too high. Now, there may some people may have rules against signs, but one thing we do a lot is the sticker on the shirt. During the SB2 hearings, we all wore these buttons. I think I have it right here.
I like your necklace.
Thank you.
Okay.
I remember that.
Cool.
I wore one of those.
Sweet.
That was the cap. So, you're wearing that in a meeting, and they know that you support that 2.5 cap. So we can make stickers or whatever. Whenever we go to gun hearings, we wear our Second Amendment stickers saying we support Second Amendment rights. Things
awesome.
Like that.
Okay.
So there are things you can do.
Let's just.
I just lost my train of thought. I had
Sorry.
something else to say, but I've lost.
I hate when that happens.
So here's the thing. I feel like this is why we had to do this video. This is why folks like you guys, instead of just being the only people out there at these meetings, we have to get more people involved, because at the end of the day, it's our own stinking fault that we're paying so much. Yes, the elected officials, we can rake them over the coals. They've signed up for that. They're public, servants. So they're there to hear it. But I also believe the ones that I know, they kind of encourage it. They're like, yeah, let me know. What do you believe? What do you, I talked to, Matt Krause and Kerry Moon are the guys that I've talked the most with. And I'm like, hey, how would you feel about me sending out a ridiculous amount of emails to get people to voice their support? They're like, man, I like it when people get involved, even if they don't agree. Just give me your opinion. And so at the end of the day, it comes back to us. And it comes back to knowing how to take action. I think that we can probably work together, literally us three, work together to give some actionable steps to people, give them those scripts, give them, go here, buy a button. Here's when the meeting time starts. Here's what to do. Anyway, but people have to be willing. People have to be willing to show up and open their mouth.
That's one of the things that we do in our citizen advocate program is we provide the information, we provide the contact names and numbers, we help people write scripts for their testimony, and we go with them. So that's another big thing. If you're intimidated by the whole thing, get somebody to go with you. It's much less intimidating with a buddy or 12. We're here to help. Reach out and we'll help you do this.
Cool. Jennifer says there are people who write in and do contact the representative city council ICs, but may not show up to the meetings. Look, I think that's awesome. So have y'all heard of this before, where people can still voice their opinions? How do people go about doing that?
Well, that's
Robert.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, you don't necessarily have showing up at the public meeting is not the only way to reach out to your elected officials. You can email your county commissioners. You can email your city council members. You can email your school board members. You can call them, as Fran is saying. You can call them and even try and set up a point like, hey, can we all go get coffee together? So, there's multiple avenues where you can reach out to these people. Or, and this is really cool too, see if they have a Twitter handle. See if they have a Facebook account and reach out to them that way. Write a comment on their Facebook post. Tweet at their account. Because then that's even cooler, because now you have a public audience, see if they're going to ignore you or respond to you, and how are they going to respond to you?
So here's the thing. What about when somebody has heard, like what Richard's saying, or had the experience of that you've tried to get them to consider the taxpayer and they don't seem to care? And Fran, I mean, both of you guys out there fighting tooth and nail, I would imagine y'all have had way more strikeouts than you've had home runs. How does it feel, and what do you do about that to actually get them to listen?
You're right. And hi, Richard. I'm glad you've tuned in. I know Richard. It doesn't matter if they don't seem to care. Excuse me. You have to keep shouting at the top of your lungs, and you have to keep doing it, not just once or twice a year. You have to do it all the time. The best way I have found to be effective as a citizen advocate is just to be diligent. For example, I spent 2 years going to school board meetings, every single one that they had, unless I was out of town. I was there. Often I had nothing to say. I just observed, I listened. But you know what? They got to know me. They started talking to me. The finance guy at Keller ISD became a friend, and we started chatting about things, and he appreciated the fact that I showed up. And so then when I come to them with something to say, hey, I don't think you're doing this right, or I think you need to do it differently, they know me, so they're more apt to listen. If they just get an email out of the blue from somebody they've never heard of, sure, they'll chalk it up. They track these things, this many citizens are opposed and this many citizens are in agreement. But it helps to develop that relationship and get to know them. Now, granted, it takes a lot of time to do that.
Yeah.
But
so much.
That's what it takes.
Yeah, so much about politics, like you're saying, Fran, it's about building relationships with
Yes.
people. Some people, it's just a matter of they may be coming from the right place and they have the right intentions. It just takes building that relationship for them to get your ear. But to Richard's point, if you encounter someone who is delivering what I would call poor customer service, as in you're telling them your needs, they're like, whatever. If they that's time to hold them accountable. If they react that way in an email, screenshot the email, share it on social media, forward it to all your friends. Hold them accountable if they're not treating you properly.
So this is one reason why I hate politics, because it oftentimes, like, to get the political grassroots or the base organized, we all got to get pissed, right? And then it ends up in this situation where everybody's just going nuts. And I think that there's an appropriate time for that. And I think that if something's pissing you off, then you need to check yourself, and you need to realize you're talking to a human being. And just like John is saying, he'll say, if you take this tone of this combative tone, then you could be the angry jerk attacking the nice older Christian on the city council who's just built the park and the splash pad all the realtors wanted. So here's the thing. I mentioned that Fran's probably had way more strikeouts than she's had home runs, but I can guarantee this: she's had way more home runs than probably the vast majority of people listening to this. And the only reason is because of the tack that she's taken, where it's like, okay, maybe there's not the quick fix where you just fire off an email and expect magic to happen. Maybe it's exactly, actually, if you actually going to care about it, then you have to be willing to take a little action, or take action by building a relationship, getting to know these people, and playing the long game a little bit by actually treating them like a human, giving them the benefit of the doubt that they may have voted that way just because they only got one side of the story. They didn't get the other side of the story. So it's on you because you never raised your voice and you didn't shake their hand and look them in the eye and say, hey, first of all, I don't agree with you, but I need to let you know I appreciate you. I appreciate you volunteering. So but I do need to voice a different perspective on this that maybe you hadn't heard about. And I'd like for you to take into consideration. And then boom, you lay it on them. Right. So I think there's a time and a place where it's like, you need to, sometimes you got to draw the line and say, you cannot cross this line. But sometimes, I'd say more times than not, it's about trying to get them to work with you, right? Just being that face and that voice.
And everyone's gone, sorry, Flan, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, even when I'm angry, I never raise my voice to an elected official. I am never rude. I don't call anybody names. I'm always respectful. But the other thing I want to tell John is don't ever apologize for standing up for liberty, for transparency, for fiscal responsibility. That's your job as a citizen to do that. And these elected people, most of them welcome input and information because, like I said, they can't be an expert on everything they need to know. And they appreciate when we come to them with good, workable information that gives them a different point of view.
All right, man. Go ahead.
I was just saying, everyone has to decide for themselves what that, as you're saying, point is, where you're like, look, I can't support you anymore as my elected official. I can't even vote for you anymore, and I don't even think we can have a relationship anymore. Everyone's got to make that decision for themselves, and a lot of Texans are facing that decision right now in light with how we've seen a lot of local officials behave like tyrants in response to the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Look, guys, I've kept you 22 minutes after I said I would, but I'm like, gosh, we've got to get the information out. I apologize for not asking for permission around the 2:00 hour to do that. But man, I just feel like, especially in this last 20 minutes, we've really got into some actionable stuff and gave people a realistic idea on what it looks like. The promise of this thing was to teach people how to eliminate property taxes. We've got two ways. I'm going to lay a third one, and then we're going to shut it down. The first way was through this 11-year plan to eliminate the whole Robin Hood thing by systematically and strategically reducing the amount that the people have to pay and increasing the amount that's state funded, right? So that was the first way. The second way is by all of us getting off of our butts and actually playing an active role at the source of it. Instead of just griping about our values, realizing this equation right here is the whole thing. Our value minus the exemption rate equals, or times the tax rate equals our tax bill. Everybody's focused on the left side of this equation, but nobody's focused on the right side. The right side, the way you affect this, the way you get rid of the whole need behind it is to show up to these budget meetings and just make your presence known. Get to know your locally elected officials, and you can actually eliminate tax on the right side of the bill. The last thing I want to mention, we're going to just touch it briefly and shut the thing off, is that last year, our state had a surplus, and Power Texans went crazy, drumming up grassroots efforts. True Texas Project was there. Guys, there was not one single thing about cutting any budget in any area. They had this surplus, and they had a decision on what they could do with the money. And if it wasn't for the grassroots and the people being active saying, shove that money down to pay off property taxes, then we would not have seen that. So I want to thank you guys. The only thing that I've heard that should have been done is that we should have made a law that says whenever we do that, we make that a permanent change. Right? So that it eliminates, or we make a bill that says whatever surplus is there, automatically it goes towards paying off property taxes or something. There's a way to do that. If we ask our legislators to make that permanent, then we can. Clarify what I'm trying to say there, Robert. That you're a genius at doing that.
I don't know about genius, but I've heard of this plan before, and this is the good news. I mean, we're in a sad time right now. Like I said, over 2 million Texans are unemployed. Many people have far less money than they had before. We are right now in a period where, from Governor Abbott and the Texas legislature are like in cost-cutting mode. This is the opportunity to finally start removing so much of the burden on state taxpayers and push for more long-term property tax relief. And I just want to add one warning, Chandler, to you and everyone watching. And I know Fran has seen this. We've seen across the state a lot of cities and counties trying to say that because of the coronavirus situation, they can invoke the disaster exemption to property tax reform that happened last year. What that reform was is simply this. Most, not all, but most cities and counties, if they want to raise your property tax bill more than 3.5% than the previous year, there has to be a tax ratification election where you, the voters, have to approve it. They're trying to say now that, well, because of coronavirus, there's a disaster exemption to this, so we don't have to do that. We can now just go as high as 8%, really. And Ken Paxton's saying, no, you really can't do that. So I'm seeing in Dallas, I'm seeing elsewhere, you really start talking to your elected officials now and say, hey, this is not the time to be hiking my tax bill higher. I really need relief. Cut your spending. And it can be done. I know of one elected official who was in a very similar situation we are in Texas, spiraling gas revenues and oil and everything. He cut their government spending close to 30%.
Wow. That's crazy.
Can be done.
Here's what I'm going to do right now. Everybody should get off of this and take action. Go look to see who you're paying your property taxes to and fire off a handful of emails and just say, hey, I just want to thank you for your service and urge you to cut the budget. Make sure that you're not increasing taxes and just do that right now. I've already got a blog where I just wrote a couple notes out where I've got a link to the first plan we mentioned. I'm going to put a link to the contact information for a bunch of these folks in Tarrant County that have that are elected officials. As people get voted out, this contact information becomes bad. So it needs to be updated next year, but it's good right now. So guys, thank you so much. I truly appreciate what you do. What do you got there? Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Hey, Fran, where can people reach you? You've got say it out loud for everybody.
Okay. So if you would like to get involved in our citizen advocate program or just want help doing all these things we've talked about, you can contact me at rhodesfran@yahoo.com.
Awesome.
All you have to do is say, I want to be on your citizen advocate thing, and I'll add you to my email list. There's no obligation. You'll get an email saying, hey, we need to do X and Y and Z. If you can do it, fine. If you can't, that's fine too. Also, I wanted to put up our website, truetexasproject.com. You can reach out to me through that as well, or you can support our efforts if you like what we do. We would love to have you on board.
All right, Robert, how would people
You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
Cool. How people get a hold of you or your organization?
Right. So if you all want to continue being updated on how local governments are affecting you with property taxes and also the coronavirus shutdown, you can go to our website, texasscorecard.com, also empowertexans.com, TEXAN as in Nick S.com. To keep updated on this stuff, go to our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, our Instagram, and our Twitter. And I'm Robert Montoya. I'm the Metroplex Bureau correspondent for the DFW area. So.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate what you do. Thank you for volunteering your time and being passionate about these issues. So many people have a debt of gratitude to you and they just don't even realize it. So thank you so much. Hey, hang on for just 1 second, but I'm going to end the broadcast and we'll talk for just one moment off air.